The Malay archipelago lies directly on the volcanic belt of the world. Like the backbone of some restless, formidable, antediluvian monster, more than 300 volcanoes rise from the sea in a great chain of islands, perhaps all that remains of a continent broken up in the prehistoric cataclysms, forming a continuous land bridge that links Asia with Australia. One of the smallest, but perhaps the most extraordinary, is the island of Bali, a cluster of high volcanoes deeply furrowed by ravines, washed out by rising rivers full of rapids and waterfalls. It drops steadily to the sea without forming lowlands, just 8 degrees south of the equator. Bali has over 2,000 square miles of extravagantly fertile lands, most of which are beautifully cultivated. Like a continual undersea ballet, the pulse of life in Bali moves with the reminiscent of the sway of marine plants and the flowing motion of octomarine current. There is a similar correlation with people clear-cut, extravagant vegetation, of their simple and sensitive temperament with a fertile land. No other people have the impression of living in such close contact with nature. The slender Balinese bodies are as much a part of the landscape as the American jungle. Their reputation for beauty is well justified. The majority of the population are handsome, with splendid physique and with a dignified elegance of bearing in both men and women of all ages. From childhood, the women walk for miles, carrying heavy loads on their heads. This gives them a great coordination of movement, a poised walk, and bodily fitness. Old women retain their strength and do not become bent hags. We were astonished at times to discover that the slender, straight silhouette we had admired from a distance belonged to an old lady with gray hair, walking with ease under 40 or 50 pounds of fruit. Their character is easy, courteous, and gentle, but they can be intense and can show strong temper if aroused. They are gay and witty. There is nothing that a Balinese loves more than a good joke. It is perhaps in their mad sense of humor, this spirit of revelation fun with which they handle even such forbidding subjects as religion and death, that the key to their character lies. Once, when I mentioned the goodness of a very short friend, the immediate reply was, "How could he be otherwise? He is so small." The pride of the Balinese has not permitted the development of one of the great professions of the East. There are no beggars in Bali, but this distinction is now being threatened by tourism. A gift must be reciprocated, and we were often embarrassed by the return presents of our poor neighbors. children of the neighborhood that Rose had treated for infected wounds always came back with presents of fruit or rice, which they handed casually to our houseboy, never mentioning them to us, as if they had wanted to avoid making a demonstration of their generosity. Needs of the population, often having enough left over to sell or give away. Even agricultural experts admit that the modern methods could not improve the already excellent results, due perhaps to the intense striving of the Balinese for improvement, their communal cooperative agricultural societies, and their system of seed selection. The villages are organized into close-knit boards or councils. Every married man is a member of the council and is morally and physically obliged to cooperate for the welfare of the community. A man is eagerly assisted by the council as a matter of duty. Since the world of a Balinese is his community, he is anxious to prove his worth, for his own welfare is in direct relation to his social behavior and his communal standing. The most striking element of the Balinese landscape is the ever-present rice field, the sawa, a patch of land filled with water held by dikes cut out of the red earth. The receding terraces resemble green plains. When they are first filled with still water, they are like mosaics of mirrors that reflect the clouds. Later, they are sprinkled with the dainty blades of the newly planted rice in an all-over pattern of chartreuse on a ground of brown ooze. Eventually, a tender yellow-green carpet which turns to a rich gold ochre as the grain ripens. Ducks are driven in flocks to the rice fields, where they are fed on all sorts of small water animals. It is obvious that the small landowners could not carry out alone the tremendous task of attending to the work of irrigation. It became necessary for them to organize into subaks, agricultural cooperative societies, water boards that control the equitable distribution of water to their members. Like other Balinese associations, the spirit of the subak is essentially communal. All members abide by the same rules. each one being allotted work in relation to the amount of water he receives. At harvest time, every morning and every evening, one sees the people in the streets. Men going to work, nonchalantly beating rhythms on their agricultural implements, or returning from the fields overlaid with sheaves of rice heavy with grain. Poised women come and go with great loads of shiny black clay pots on their heads. If it happens to be market day in the village, at dawn, the roads are crowded with husky people from the nearby villages who come to sell their produce piles of coconuts, bananas, or vegetables, pottery, mats, baskets, and so forth, carrying on their heads even the table that serves as a stand. If there is a feast in the village temple, the people parade in yellow, green, and magenta silks with fantastic pyramids of fruit and flowers, offerings to the gods in a pageant that would have made Diaghilev turn green with envy. The women are the financiers that control the market. One seldom sees men there, except for certain trades or to help carry such heavy loads as fat pigs. The market reaches its height about noon, when it is hard to walk through the crowd of semi-nude women. At that time, the animation is very great, and the market resounds with the excited bargaining. The thousand smells of coconut oil, flowers, spices, and dried fish combine to make the pungent smell so characteristic of Balinese markets. The soft browns and yellows of the women's skirts and the bright colored sashes they wear, the graceful movements and unconscious beauty of their poses make of the market a show as interesting to watch as their luxurious and spectacular feasts. Young people meet at the market at harvest time, when everybody helps to cut the rice, at the river and so forth, but especially at the frequent village celebrations and nocturnal theatrical performances, when the boys meet their friends and make new conquests. An attraction at all festivals is the pretty dagangs, girls who run small stands of food, drinks, cigarettes, and siri. They sit behind little tables illuminated by petrol lamps, scraping coconuts, grinding sauces, and serving drinks, surrounded by a circle of admirers who squat on the ground, joking with them on the pretext of buying a pennyworth of peanuts or a pack of cigarettes. Some girls know that it is best to remain cold and indifferent, attending to their business, while others are gay and friendly and can answer cleverly to the boys' wisecracks. After the world, the mountains and the cardinal directions were created, and there were trees, fruits, and flowers. The gods made 4 human beings out of red earth, whom they provided with utensils to work and houses to live in. Batara Siwa, the Supreme Lord, next made 4 mature girls for wives of the 4 men. The god of love, Batara Semara, made mating a pleasure so that women would be fertilized, and eventually the 4 couples had many children, grew, became adolescent, married, and had children. Family ties are the most important factor of Balinese life, a continuous sequence that relates the individual to his community and to the total of the Balinese people in a relationship that represents community and nationality to them. A Balinese feels that his most important duty is to marry as soon as he comes of age and to raise a family to perpetuate his line. He centers all his hopes in having children, preferably male children, who will look after him in his old age, and most important of all, sons who will take the proper care of his remains after he is dead, performing the necessary rites to liberate his soul for reincarnation, so it will not become an aimless, wandering ghost. The Balinese are as fastidious in the care of their bodies as they are about dress, and people of all classes, conditions permitting, make almost a cult of cleanliness. They bathe frequently during the day, whenever they feel hot or after strenuous work, but 2 baths a day are the rule, in the morning and evening before each meal. The Balinese admire a smooth, clear skin, the color of gold, and pretty girls have a mortal dread of being sunburnt, so they do not like to go unnecessarily into the sun. The skin is kept in condition by rubbing and massaging while bathing. Afterwards, anointing the body with coconut oil and bore, a yellow paste that protects the skin from exposure to the rain. Bore is made of mashed leaves, flowers, aromatic roots, cloves, nutmeg, and turmeric, kunit, for coloring. Niepi. Once a year, at the spring equinox, every community holds a general cleaning out of devils, driving them out of the village with magical curses and rioting by the entire population. This is followed by a day of absolute stillness, the suspension of all activity, from which the ceremony takes its name. Niepi marks the new year and the arrival of spring, the end of the troublesome rainy season. There is great excitement all over Bali at this time. There are melis, or processions, to take the gods to the sea for their symbolical bath. The celebration proper extends over a period of 2 days, the Metjaru, the great purification offering, and Niepi, the day of silence. On the first day, the government allows unrestricted gambling and cockfighting, an essential part of the ceremony, because the land is cured by spilling blood over impure air. Everybody in Bali seems to be an artist. Coolies and princes, priests and peasants, men and women alike, can all dance, play musical instruments, paint or carve in wood and stone. It was often surprising to discover that an otherwise poor and dilapidated village harbored a temple, great orchestra, or a group of reputed actors. Women of all ages have always taken part in the ritual offering dances. In olden times, only little girls became dancers and actresses. But today, beautiful girls take part in theatrical performances, playing the parts of princesses formerly performed exclusively by female impersonators. The food that Balinese gourmets eat at festivals is as elaborate as any in the world. The daily diet of cold white rice is helped, however, by a side dish of vegetables chopped together with a dozen or so spices, aromatic herbs, grated coconut, and the hottest chili peppers in the world. Although the daily meal was frugal, the Balinese seemed exceptionally well fed. They were continually eating at odd hours, buying food at public eating booths, in the market, at the crossroads, and particularly at festivals. Balinese is so hot that it made even me, a Mexican raised on chili peppers, cry and break out in beads of perspiration. But after the first shocks, and when we became accustomed to Balinese flavors, we became Balinese gourmets and soon started trying out strange new combinations. Silo Piang, our hostess, understood our appreciation of their delicacies and often brought Rose new dishes to taste. As the archetype of the delicate and feminine, the legong is the finest of Balinese dances. Connoisseurs discuss the comparative excellence of various legongs as intensely as we discuss our dancers. The legong is performed at feasts, generally in the late afternoon when the heat of the day has subsided. At the first rumor that there is going to be a legong in the central square, or if it is at a private feast in the middle of the street, the crowd begins to gather. The dancers are dressed from head to foot in silk, overlaid with glittering gold leaf, and on their heads they wear great helmets of gold, decorated with rows of fresh frangipani blossoms. The orchestra plays a vigorous melody and the legong players dance with the open fans fluttering at such speed that their outline is lost like the wings of a hummingbird flying suspended in space. Each motion follows the last in perfect rhythmic sequence. Technical perfection transformed into beauty and style. The artist is, in Bali, essentially a craftsman, and at the same time an amateur, casual and anonymous, who uses his talent knowing that no one will care to record his name for posterity. His only aim is to serve his community, seeing that the work is well done. Actors and musicians play for the feasts of the village without pay, and when they perform for private festivals, they are lavishly entertained and banqueted instead. effervescence of artistic activity and the highly developed aesthetic sense of the population can perhaps be explained by a natural urge to express themselves, combined with the important factor of leisure resulting from well-organized agricultural cooperativism. However, the most important element for the development of a popular culture, with primitive as well as refined characteristics, was perhaps the fact that the Balinese did not permit the centralization of the artistic knowledge into a special intellectual class. No feast is complete in Bali without music and elaborate dramatic and dance performances. No one would dream of getting married, or holding a cremation, or even of celebrating a child's birthday, without engaging troops of dancers and actors to entertain the guests and the neighbors. During the anniversary feasts of the temple, there are always dances that last throughout the night and may even continue for days, with a different type of show every afternoon and night. Although we had heard enthusiastic reports about the splendid music of Bali, its subtle beauty and vigor came to us as a revelation on our first night on the island. 25 or 30 young men, who nude above the waist and wearing sashes of blue silk, sat cross-legged around a square formed by impressive instruments in elaborate carved frames. There were metallophones, sets of polished bronze bowls, great bronze gongs, and many kinds of small cymbals. There were also 2 long drums wrapped in black and white checkered cloth. Playing sinuous melodies that broke at unexpected places into resonant accents or rolled into fast syncopation, building up the themes until they reached a furious climax that faded away into the original theme, but enriched by rhapsodical ornamentation on the high instruments against the measured basses and occasional reverberations of the deep gongs. It was an oriental ultra-modern Bach fugue, an astounding combination of bells, machinery, and thunder. The performance, we found afterwards, was given by one of the finest gamelan orchestras in the island, the Gong Bela Luan, pride of the quarter of the town that was later to become our home. One of the leaders of the gong was Gusti Alit Oka, the young prince who became our host. When he rented us part of his house, we went to bed every night to the music of the orchestra that rehearsed only a few doors away in the Balai Banya, the communal meeting hall of Bela Luan. Despite the fact that there is no trace of Western influence in the music of Bali, even those who hear it for the first time are carried away by it. There is in Balinese music a unified range of sonorities tending towards one sound. There is a general tone color of metallic percussions, tingling, acid sonorities that can be clashing and violent or soft and delicate, but are never sweet and plaintive. Their musical phraseology is simpler, more confined within a margin of sobriety than our expansive and unrestrained music. Next to having good orchestras, a fine group of dancers is an almost organic need for the spiritual and physical life of the community. Besides the passion they show for their music and dancing and the important part these play in the ritual, to have a skillful and famous group of dancers brings pride and social prestige to the village ward, the Banjar. The Balinese attribute a divine origin to music and dancing. It is said that Batara Guru, the supreme teacher, invented the first instruments, and that Indra, the lord of the heavens, originated dancing when he created the incomparably beautiful Ledari, the nymphs of heaven, to dance for the pleasure of the gods. Plays an important part in the dancer's education. While the pupil learns the elemental sequence of the dance, the basic steps, and general movements of the arms, he exercises regularly to acquire suppleness of every muscle and control over each member until his body becomes practically double-jointed. The legs, however, are used with a minimum of importance in the dance, except for locomotion, and in certain sitting dances like the Keviya are not used at all. It is said that such movements are possible only because of the extreme youth of the dancers. It is true that a Legong dancer retires at 12 or 13, or perhaps continues in another type of dance, and that a fully grown girl is often considered too big to dance. But there are old women who are fine dancers, and a good Baris performer is usually a man past middle age. Like music, dancing has developed to a standard of technical perfection that makes of it a difficult science, requiring years of special physical training and practice. The excellence of a performer does not depend only on his skill, but also on his personality, emotional intensity, and the expressiveness of his feature. Dance in Bali cannot be considered as an art separate from the theater. In fact, the arts and the theater are so closely allied that there is no word in Balinese meaning theater. No Balinese would think of separating a show into its component parts, or, on the other hand, think a show complete that did not contain music and dancing. They divide the theater rather according to the style of the story, which in turn dictates its music and the style of its technique. One boat brought the holy Barong Landong, 4 giant puppets who performed in the temple. They were Jerolu, a ribald old woman with a protuberant forehead, enormously distended earlobes, and deep wrinkles outlined in gold all over her white mask. A lecherous black monster with prominent teeth called Yerogede. A young prince, Manri, and his beautiful princess, Jili Towong, richly dressed in green and gold, who wore great flower headdresses over the yellow masks. Normal-sized attendants held gold umbrellas of state over the giants as they waddled towards the temple in ceremonial procession, with music and a retinue of men bearing spears tipped with red fur. After dedicating an offering, the giants danced to the accompaniment of gongs, flutes, and drums. That old rascal, Yerogede, talked and laughed in a deep, thunderous voice, while Jerolu leaped, whooped, and yelled in a shrill falsetto, all behaving in a manner quite undignified for their holy character. Their remarks were of the sort that made my polite Balinese friends blush, especially in the episode when the prince made love to the princess. An indispensable part of the ritual feasts of the old villages is the Baris Gede, a stately war dance in which 10 or 12 middle-aged warriors with their heads covered with flowers and wearing magic scarves, carrying long spears tipped with peacock feathers, dance in double line, grimacing and striking heroic poses until the music becomes violent. Then they enact a sham battle with their black and silver spears. No dance in the world can be more manly than the Baris. Just as the Legong is the representative feminine dance, so the Baris typifies the strong elegance of the male and is the source of material for all masculine dances. Remaining essentially a war dance, the style of the ritual Baris was later adapted to the performance of heroic plays in the Baris Pendet, in which individual dancers play the military heroes using dramatic dialogues to accompany their movement. The Janger was a recent development. It had started suddenly when about 1925 the first company of Malay operettas visited the island. The Balinese immediately created their own version of the pantomime, and the Janga spread like an epidemic. We feared that the Janga would kill other forms of Balinese dancing, but on our return 2 years later, we were surprised to find that there was no more Janga. All the famous groups had stopped. The most exhilarating show of the Balinese was dead and forgotten. Only a sleepy group remained, the Janga, for the tourists, still avidly photographing what they called temple dances. With the passing of the Janga, the classical forms of theater regained popularity, and during our second visit, it was the Aja that had again become the favorite. A performance by a good Arja ensemble is a social event in the village. It is at Arja shows that young people meet and love affairs are started, helped by the romantic atmosphere of the love stories and the late hours. The Arja stories are romantic episodes of memorable love affairs of princes and princesses, generally full of fantastic situations and with a distinctive erotic flavor. The distinguished characters speak and sing in Kawi, which is translated into common Balinese by the comedians for the benefit of the unscholarly crowd. The comedy is incredibly funny and rough slapstick, sprinkled with all sorts of bawdy jokes. The play begins with the appearance of the Gondon, the female eternal princess. The part of the Gondon is usually played by a middle-aged, homely male. Praising his mistress and begging her to come out, she is finally persuaded. The curtains of the little booth at the end of the dancing space part, and the much heralded beauty appears. In progressive Ajas, she may be a young girl dressed in gold with a great flower headdress. But generally, beautiful young girls cannot sing very well, and in good Arjas, the part is played by a male actor, famous for his high falsetto. Under the hanging rotors of a great baringing, or banyan tree in the central square of the village, sat a dozen girls and a dozen boys in groups of 6, forming a square. The girls facing the girls, the boys opposite each other. A dance master, the dags, sat in the center. The boys shouted and shook, while the girls sang with baby voices, flinging their hands and flashing their eyes. After a while, a girl appeared dressed as a prince, singing and posturing, quarreling with a wild-looking bird. An actor with a frightfully mask, wings and a bright-colored tail. The show ended with the death of the bird, shot by an arrow of the princess. Individualism is not encouraged in the essentially communal Balinese society. But, from time to time, the genius of an artist breaks through the conventional mold and emerges as a powerful personal influence. Mario straightened like a startled cobra, tense and nervous, holding the fan over his head as if to shade his eyes. The opening theme was fast and furious, and Mario began to dance, waving his fan energetically, darting glances from side to side as if at an imaginary enemy. The tempo increased to a frantic climax, broken suddenly by a melodious solo on the rayong. Mario relaxed and danced delicately, his expression softened, and his movements became languid. Throughout the dance, there were sharp contrasts, changing moods that follow the music, alternating strong motives with amorous, playful ones. The dancer wriggling like a trained cobra, swaying in a way that recalled the dance of a praying mantis to fascinate its prey, or stiffening with commanding elegance. Mario, a young man of humble birth, startled South Bali with a new dance, which combined the rugged manliness of the heroic dances, bodies, with the delicacy of the legong. Its novelty consisted in the fact that the dancer never raised himself from the ground, moving only from the waist up, giving greater emphasis to the movements of the torso, arms, and hands, and focusing the attention on the dancer's facial expression. In using his body like a sensitive musical instrument, the young dancer interpreted even the most delicate moods of the island's finest orchestra. His fame spread to the foreign visitors on the island. To dance the caviar, it is necessary to have what the Balinese call a good face, expressive and mobile, and to possess elegance, intensity, and personal magnetism. Besides highly finished technical training, Mario had great musical knowledge, and one of his specialties was to play the trompong while he danced, twirling the sticks in his fingers and moving with great agility along the scale of inverted bronze bowls. The name of Mario became as well known to the world traveler as that of the Mei Lang Fan Shan Ka, or Escudero. Travelers watching dance become bored after a short time and cannot understand why the great crowds sit listening with profound attention to the plays that do not end till dawn. But to the Balinese, the dance is more than stage movements. It is the medium of the classical poetry, the ribald humor, and most important of all, it is the greatest factor in the spiritual education of the masses. In a performance given by an inspired storyteller, there prevails the curious mixture of mysticism and slapstick humor that the Balinese love so. Every object and every move of the dance has a symbolical significance aside from the purely entertainment aspect of the show. Religion is to the Balinese both community and nationality. They live with their forefathers in a great family of the dead and the living. Rather than a sectarian system in the hands of a hierarchy of priests, the religion in Bali is a set of rules of behavior, a model of life. Motivated by this background of religious beliefs, the Balinese found it necessary to establish a communal cooperation to provide for the magnificent festivals that are such an important part of their life. The temple is certainly the most important institution on the island, and every temple celebrates its birthday, or the Lan, on the anniversary of its consecration with a great feast that constitutes the principal social event for the entire community, and in which everybody in the village takes part with equal enthusiasm. The men attend to the decorations of the temple, build the temporary bamboo altars, erect awnings for entertainers, adorn the shrines with flags, pennants, and penniors, cook the food for the feast, and dress up the statues of the demons that guard the entrance. At the same time, the women prepare the offerings and make lamaks. The pemangku receive and bless the offerings that each woman brought. Such is the general pattern along which a temple feast moves. But again, each community has its own way of doing things, and no two feasts are carried out exactly in the same manner. The gong played all night the stately ancient music, and as dawn approached, the old Burmanku moved around quietly, supervising things, putting out the lights and preparing for the final ceremony, the adoration of the rising sun. When Mendet was danced again by middle-aged women and offerings were dedicated in the direction of the first rays of sun that appeared in the horizon. This ended the feast, and by morning, when the essence of the offerings had been consumed by the gods, the women came to collect their respective offerings and take them home. Every Balinese believes that his body accumulates a magic energy called Sakti that enables him to withstand the attacks of evil powers, human or supernatural, that seek constantly to undermine his magic health. This Sakti is not evenly divided. Some people are born with a capacity to store a higher charge of magic than others. They become the priests, witch doctors, endowed with supernatural powers. The Sakti can be trained to serve them at will by the systematic study of the arts of magic and meditation. But people whose hearts are contaminated by evil use the magic science to harm their enemies, or simply to satisfy their lowest instincts. An explanation of the Balinese attitude in regard to personal magic can be found in a principle that constantly obsesses them: strong and weak, clean and unclean. Thus, the individual is magically strengthened when he is in the state of psychic purity, Ening, Suji, Nirmala, acquired through the performance of the cleansing ritual. The antithesis of this is the often mentioned Sebel condition, uncleanliness, when a run-down soul renders one vulnerable to the attacks of evil. Not even the deities are free from becoming Sebel, and like any other woman, Rangda and the death goddess Durga are Sebel once every month. The normal way to bring out the dormant Sakti is to undergo Mawinten, the initiation ceremony of priests, magicians, dancers and actors, to give them the luck, beauty, cleverness and personal charm that enable them to be successful.
कॾहिं